Hello, my name is Cicely G, and I am the host of Give and Take, the Positives in Life. It has been a wonderful, wonderful, auspicious week. This week we've had a visit from the Pope, and we've had a lunar eclipse moon, which was extraordinary, which I saw last night. So there's been wonderful, wonderful things happening. And in saying that, I have a wonderful guest with me here today, and his name is BOD STAUF, and he's a Yonkers community activist, and we're going to have a discussion about all the great things that he's doing in his community and the things that help him stay positive in life. So welcome, BOD STAUF.
Well, thank you very much. I wasn't sure where that introduction was going. When you were talking about lunar eclipse, I thought we were next. It was going to be lunatic. I didn't know where we were going on this.
Okay, and this is the
Good to be here.
wonderful humor that Bob has that always keeps us on our toes and keeps us wondering. So thank you.
Otherwise known as punishment.
Okay, punishment. Okay.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good.
And good luck. This is this first of your shows? Or?
This is the third. I've
Third
had
show.
two. In the first one, I had in Jalal from
Nice.
Brahma Kumaris, Westchester. And then I had Yedida Yehuda.
Very
And
fine.
she shared some very, very important information in regards to a wholeness in your health and your life and all kinds of aspects. It was very good.
That's brilliant.
And so now I have you, and you are my third guest. So we're moving forward, moving onward and upward. And so, Bob, I'd like you to share some of the things that you do in Yonkers as far as your activism.
Well, one of the things that I have a friend who says that very typically I seem to have more jobs than anyone he knows that pay absolutely nothing. Having said that, and it may seem trite, but you don't get the wealth for the bank account, which wouldn't be bad if I got that. But at any rate, you do get spiritual wealth and a certain sense of comfort of who you are and a sense of satisfaction from what you do.
Right.
One way of identifying myself, although that doesn't really say who I am, but to talk about the kinds of things that I do as a community activist in terms of the entitlement, what people know me as. I am the president of the Salvation Army Advisory Board. I am the president of the 3rd Precinct Police Community Council. I had done a significant amount of work with Soul Solutions, working with ex-offenders. And I have been in the leadership right now as vice president, formerly president, chair, and so forth of the American Irish Association of Westchester County. And I have also some former roles that I still pay attention to in terms of community affairs and in my own church and so forth.
Wonderful.
I've been the head of the been a Eucharistic minister, leader of song, and the adult education of St. Margaret of Cortona, which is just south of Yonkers, right there in Riverdale. And I'm also actively involved in facilitating the Brahma Kumaris movement, which is a spirituality group known throughout the world and in our little corner of the world, just trying to highlight some of the involvement in terms of meditation, in terms of self-improvement, and in terms of a good working relationship, one with the other, people of all faiths participating in establishing a betterment of self, a betterment of their relationship with others, and with their higher power.
Okay, now is there any religious practice that you do?
I am a Roman Catholic, St. Margaret of Cortona Church.
Okay.
And that's totally disconnected from Brahma Kumaris,
Right.
which is a spiritual group.
Right.
And which welcomes people from various faiths. Some folks would suggest that, well, spirituality and that needs to be separate and distinct from, in terms of direction, in terms of participation. I see it as an enhancement of my involvement with the Roman Catholic faith.
Right.
I had several years ago gone to Mount Abu in Rajasthan, in India, participated in the Peace of Mind retreat. And Brahma Kumaris, by the way, is bkwsu.org for those who wish to look it up and learn more about it.
Thank you for that, Bob.
But I can tell you that it was of interest because it's a holiday from the hustle and bustle of life.
Right.
But the holiday from hustle and bustle of life is doing without meat, doing without all the distractions that the material world has,
Right.
and just simply and kind of an inner growth and inner understanding of who you are. And I came back, unlike some other vacations that I've been from. In fact, all vacations, you always come back saying, I need another one.
Right.
And not from this one. This one, you came back fulfilled and not feeling you need another one, just saying, well, now I'm going to put my vacation into practice and make sure that I have that sense of focus all my life.
Wonderful. So you really got an experience when you went to...
Really did, and
okay.
I must say, I felt that as opposed to being a substitute for my own Catholic faith involvement, it was an enhancement.
And that's what I see as an enhancement. It's like it's not instead of, or,
Exactly.
you know, it's enhancing your whole, you know, practice in the church. And
Exactly.
the spirituality goes hand in hand. It goes, you know, sometimes people think, well, it has to be one or the other. I'll have to give up that to take that. But that's not necessary. That's why the show is called Give and Take.
That's
you can
right.
take good from everything that you are involved in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I do think that the positive nature of Brahma Kumaris, and it is the 24/7 commitment of those who are involved with Brahma Kumaris, in terms of always somehow or another maintaining a focus on what is important in life, it was truly greatly impressive to me. Not simply that they had the meditation, which of course is significant, not because of the sharing, but also the fact that even while we were there, if I said thank you, don't thank me, thank Baba, thank God,
yeah.
you know, and that's seen 24/7 all the time.
And it's a wonderful feeling to have that
It
experience.
actually is.
Yes.
It actually is, yes.
Now this week, we've been conducting something called flash meditations.
Yes.
Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because that was very interesting how that's in collaboration United Nations that they're doing this
And the
flash
International
meditation.
Day of Peace, of course,
Right.
which was the 21st of September, and we just continued it straight on through in terms of the various meditations with various powers and various focal points. For example, we had just come from stressing courage when we were at City Hall. I guess you have to have courage to put up with some of the politics of the city of Yonkers. So we were in front of City Hall, did receive a very fine proclamation and so forth, but we spent time in front of City Hall understanding that to meditate on peace, but in thinking about peace from the point of view of courage.
Right.
You know, and then just recently we were down by the river, and of the Yonkers Hudson River, well, not the Yonkers Hudson River, but the Hudson River by Yonkers.
Right.
And we focused there as well, and you participated with us.
Yes, I did, and it was a very wonderful experience. It just so happened that there was a photographer, and I had asked him if he would take some pictures, and he said he felt the wonderful vibrations from us meditating over there. He said at one point he felt like the water just went quiet. So, I mean, it's just very, very powerful when you come together collectively to do these kinds of meditations.
We have a suspicion that this photographer follows you about, that they're doing something on Vogue magazine. That's not true?
No, not true, not true, Bob.
Okay, fine. And then we went to Glen Allen Casino as well, and we had a whole focus there as well. And so, and that was on the idea of forgiveness.
And that was forgiveness.
Which, when you think about it, is certainly if we all are more forgiving in this world, what kind of a peaceful world we would indeed have.
Right.
And forgiveness sometimes is a concept that's extremely challenging to forgive other people. All of us sometimes wrestle with it at some time in our lives. Or even those momentary types of situations where you go, oh, geez, impossible.
Right.
Hold on, and what are you saying? You just say, I'm impossible. Really.
Right. And that was it, because forgiveness to me was that I have to forgive myself in order to forgive the other person.
Yeah.
And so therefore, what did I do? What was my part in why I have to give forgiveness?
Exactly.
So it's like we have to look at things from the inside first and look at ourselves before we start channeling it to somebody else. And therefore there can be a deeper understanding of these wonderful spiritual powers that they have.
And as I was sharing, in any negotiation, which is what forgiveness is all about, you look for a win-win situation. And when we indeed forgive, not only does the person forgiven get so much, but the person who is forgiving wins. And so that's not a bad proposition.
Right.
So in a way, it's altruistic to forgive, and in other ways, it's get back time too.
Exactly.
And then, of course, you and I have both been involved in the political arena at one particular point in time, where it's like, what's in it for me? And as life goes on, you begin to realize that, you know what, it's so transitory, those what's in it for me moments, trying to say, well, you know, if I do this for you, what are you going to do back? I'm worrying about that all the time. You know, it's a prospect. I think God has allowed us to live a little longer because of the opportunity to do some more soul searching.
Yes, exactly. That's a wonderful way to say that. That was beautiful. And you know, in our journeys together, because it's been quite for many years.
That's correct.
That we also served on the Salvation Army board, which was very good, and I appreciate you nominating me to sit on that board with you. So just share a little bit about that, the Salvation Army board, and what are some of the activities that they do on that board?
I think one of the important things to realize about the Salvation Army is first of all its history, that it has done so much with fortunately the wars that have gone on, and there are so many people that when you're there with doing those kettle drives and you talk to people that have been veterans, they remember that when they looked for those little things, the washcloth or this, that, or the other thing, the Salvation Army was always there. When you talk to people who have been addicted or people who have been in a real depravity of their own lives, the Salvation Army was never afraid to just go right out there and to do those types of things that the Pope was talking about, doing outreach to those who are out of the mainstream. Well, guess what? The Salvation Army certainly has been there.
Right.
You know, it absolutely paid attention to the disenfranchised, to the poor, to the people who could not figure out what it's all about. And Salvation Army in Yonkers also do a lot of things to pay attention to the youth.
Yes.
And in the area, and of course we have the usual food chains and so forth for people to have and so on. And I think that one of the things that we're now discussing, and I think is terribly important, is to realize when it is important that the handouts become hand-ups.
Right.
Because, my own do-gooder philosophy is let's keep giving, 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 and that's very important.
Right.
At the same time, to help those who are receiving to realize that we don't want to encourage a cycle of dependency.
You don't want the dependency,
you really don't want. And that sense of entitlement, yes, all of God's creatures are entitled to have a decent piece of bread and so forth, a piece of something to eat and a place to live. But at the very same time, you want to give them that encouragement and that support behind to get them to really want to move and to have that same positive outlook on life that we ourselves have been gifted by God to have.
I agree with that, because what's the sense of giving, giving, giving? And if you're just going to keep that person at that level, the point is to uplift, to give that person self-sovereignty,
and
so
I
that
tell
they
my,
can lift up themselves instead of being dependent.
I tell my liberal friends that, you know, and I consider myself in that progressive mode, but we have to be careful of this, because in some ways, if we are continuously giving and thinking that we are the superior ones, there's kind of a slavery in that too, because we're enslaving people to maintain that lifestyle.
That's right.
And to continue that forever and ever. And that's not a way of having a respect of personhood, which we really need to have.
Right, right. Yes. No, I definitely agree with that. And just in having, you know, been born and raised in England, and I've sort of seen that.
You're from England.
Myself.
I could never tell that.
Really? Oh, yes.
Well, I don't know.
Oh,
I
no.
don't know why I got that from your accent.
Neighbours, Irish and England, right?
Jolly good, actually.
But yes, so, and I've seen that, how that became like a dependency kind of situation, which has got out of control. So, you know, what happens is that those that really need it then are not able to get it because they've just sort of given it to everybody. So you have to be very careful of that kind of thing, because if you're giving and you're not receiving, at some point it's going to what? fall through the bottom.
That's exactly right.
And then create an issue. So there has to be a very careful, I'm glad you discussed that as a very important thing.
We've discussed it, and I've kind of led that discussion at some of our advisory board meetings, because I think it's important that we take everything into context as to what we're doing.
Exactly. Because what does God really want for us to be? Self-sovereign, right?
That's
He wants
exactly
us to
right.
be that individual. He wants to give us the knowledge and make us just go forward and do what we need to do to
Yes.
serve, but not to make people dependent. That's not what it's about. It's for each person to be an individual. So thank you
Precisely.
about that, Bob.
Yeah.
So also, with your third precinct role, that's another important
Well, the
role.
good
that
thing
you're
about
in.
that, you know, I mean, the Pope was here talking about the fact that people need to understand one another. Throughout the country, we've had some really crises of understanding between groups that are amongst the disenfranchised, certainly persons of color,
Right.
and the police department. And then we worry about what the blue lives matter and black lives matter and what happened to these lives, and somebody says white lives matter. Well, what are you saying? And it becomes very, very confusing. But one of the things that I think has happened in Yonkers has not always been, the snide commentary has often been that Yonkers is a city of hills where nothing is on the level. But at the same time, one would have to at least recognize, and God forbid, show goes out and we discover something else. But right now, the relationship between the communities and the police department in Yonkers has been rather good.
Ooh.
And part of that, I think, is because, and there was a Commissioner Al McAvoy, he was captain before that, when he came up with the concept of precinct councils. And that's, I think that came well before some of the others in other parts of the state and of the country, where basically the idea is that the police really need to understand where the community is coming from.
Right.
The community needs to express them in what do we say, in ways that really help them to understand, to be maybe even disagree at times without being disagreeable. And the police need to understand that, and we need to understand that they certainly go through an awful lot in life.
Sure.
It's a tough bargain, but so there needs to be understanding, people sitting down and to share. And I'm rather happy because in our police council meeting, you're welcome to come at any time. Like
Right.
you're welcome to come and give a talk. You can talk about your show, and now it's going to be taking over NBC News and NBC tonight.
You always have such
Tonight
great
show.
things. You always have great aspirations for me.
Absolutely, this, you know. But at
Wonderful.
any rate, I mean, we have people from. It's a nice multi-ethnic group of sharing. Probably the largest group, Latino, which is good because we have the largest population is
Right.
in Southwest Yonkers is Latino. And it's a good chance for people of intergenerationally too, people of different age groups, different ethnic backgrounds and so forth, different circumstances in life to come
Yes.
together and to share what their concerns are and to learn from the department again what their views are.
Right.
And I think we have an excellent commissioner, Charles Gardner, and his attitude is, I mean, they adopted that, I don't know whether you had seen the situation where the police would come up and shake hands with people.
Right. I've seen many
Yeah.
different instances of really wonderful, like heartwarming kind of bonding with
Yes.
police and children. I've seen someone bought chips and drinks for all the children and sit and those kinds of things need to happen. So to break those barriers down and to break those fears down.
They have an international night out in the summertime, as you perhaps know, in all four sectors, all four precincts. And that's good for the night, but that type of spirit needs to continue every night.
Right.
You know, I don't mean that the police are going to hand out food every time they see you,
Right.
but you know that there need not be that sense of fear. And you know, years ago, I remember as a young teacher going into Elliott Avenue, and it was an all people of color area, and the little kids looking at me. You know, Mr. Whiteface comes marching in, and they're looking at me, "You policeman," you know, and a little
Right.
nervous.
Yes.
That should not happen.
Okay.
So
Right,
that's the purpose of the police community councils, again, to bring people with different experiences together and to share.
So Bob, you would what I would call an all-rounder. You're an all-rounder, which is great. You know, I would like you to discuss a
I
little
gotta be
bit
a little
about.
bit less round though. But go on.
I would like you to discuss a little bit about the Pope's visit and what it meant to you.
The one thing that what it meant to me is that it's very important of the leader of any faith or any leader of any institution, or for those who represent an institution, to be at once deeply spiritual, but at the same time deeply human.
Right.
And this Pope, I think, has just so excited people. Off the subject for a second, it amused me when someone said, "He's bigger than Michael Jackson."
Right, the crowd, I mean,
Which he meant as a compliment, that was fine. But at any rate,
Right.
just that, just as I did praise to the Salvation Army because of its, sleeves rolled down, Christianity with its sleeves rolled up.
Right.
That was a good definition, I thought, of the Salvation Army, and this is exactly what the Pope is about. It's like, that inevitably you're the head of a number of people that are Catholics, but at the same time, sleeves rolled up, get right in there. Because of my own involvement with ex-offenders, I was very, very touched when he went to the prison.
That was very
and,
good.
and shared and talked with them, and to watch the look on the folks there, and there, but
Because
for the
all
grace
need
of
to be
God could
served,
go
right?
anybody,
All need to be served. And his motto is, and you need to be forgiven.
Yes.
So was there any one thing that the Pope said that really struck a chord with you and you felt like this is something that I need to hold on to? Because he seems like he's made some significant changes in people's lives since he's been here.
I just think the tremendous stress on empathy, not that we need to have one with one another, working together. It's always been my excitement as a person, even within the Catholic faith, to do outreach,
Right.
and to see that, for example, a young friend of mine, you know him, Eric Schoen,
Yes.
gave up 3 hours, and he has a terrible back, to stand and see that 10-second glimpse
Right, 10-second
at Central
glimpse.
Park, and he
Right.
stood there for 3 hours, and it meant so much to him to go there,
Yeah.
and to see him, because to see the transcendent nature of the Pope, who meant so much to so many people, and then to help all of us to understand that, and he would be the first to say it, that
Right.
in our adulation for him, it's Jesus that he is representing, but it's not him as such, as to understand that we need to understand that every single day of our lives we're supposed to be paying attention and excited by people who do good.
Exactly.
Not just somebody who has the rock star religious spiritual magnificence, but just anyone and to always try to see the good in other people. It's just
Yeah.
so important.
And that's the whole point of doing this show.
Yes,
is
and
to
it's
give
an
and
excellent
take.
point.
And it's to give and take, so that because somebody is doing something that's good in their life, so, and as somebody who might be going through something, and you might say that one thing that makes them feel better. So that's the whole point of doing the show.
That's fantastic.
Because we all have something to give. We all have something to take. So not that what I'm doing is better than what you're doing. No. Whatever you're doing, I can take from you, or whatever I'm doing, you can take from me. And together, it could be harmony.
It's truly an excellent theme, and I think that one also has to, again, remember not to get too excited about what oneself, we have what we
Right.
have, but for the grace of God, that we're even
Exactly.
able to do this. When I go through some of the, do you have this, do you have that, do you have the next thing, the doctor, when they go through all those things, and I realize, you know what, I've got an awful lot of health going on here. I complain about some of the things that in my life,
Right.
but my God, look at all these things that I am not suffering from. The fact that I am able to offer the singing of my voice, or the understanding the right thing to do, or the opportunity to do outreach, is but for the grace of God, I would not be able to do it, and
Right.
that needs to be the dedication. It's not me as such.
Because
beyond that.
the basis of our life is spirituality. You have to have something to give you a foundation. When you look at most of the, I don't want to say all, but most of the very successful people in life, they have that spirituality, and it provides that foundation for them. Like I just happen to say, like Oprah.
Yes.
You know, she's very spiritual and practiced with that very deep spirituality, like she's going to be having this show Belief.
Yes.
And she's bringing in all the different religions and the different spirituality, and she's connecting and saying, but it's all coming from God. And that's it. It's all coming from the one. It's all
Oprah's
coming
unique
from God.
because the definition I was going to say before, when you said success, depends upon your definition of success.
Right.
And her definition, it's interesting because from many aspects, she's successful.
She is.
But the bottom line of success, and I think she would admit, has to be the spirituality that she has within her.
Exactly.
But she certainly is doing rather well financially and in every which way.
But she's doing wonderful in giving
no,
back.
No, I'm not criticizing
Yeah, no,
it
I
at
know
all.
you're not.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying it's
Yes.
you know, in fact, I'm not criticizing it. I have to worry that I'm not jealous.
But it's wonderful, and it's like, you know, whatever you get in life, whatever you receive in life, you give.
Yeah.
And you don't hold on to it, because that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to give whatever it is, those wonderful gifts that we receive, so that other people can reap the benefits. And that's one of the things that you've done, Bob. I really can truly say that, knowing you for many years, that you truly are an activist, very passionate about what you do. You don't give up. You continue, you support whatever you feel that it's the right thing to support. And not too many people have that wonderful trait that you do.
I had a friend of mine who used to say, you think you'd stay home and mind your own business.
We can't have you do that, Bob.
Well, it's interesting because my mother, I remember, had said, why don't you just stay out of people's, and I said, Mom, because that's where I got it. My mother used to always, we lived in a one room and then 2 room furnished apartment, furnished room, and I could hardly wait until I would get old enough to get into people's business, but to see what can I do, because she was always trying to help, always there.
Yes.
Always out there. Because she said, well, you should, there's a thing, and of course you have to be careful of this, and there needs to be a balance. The big thing was mind your own business and save your own soul, and you have a world's work to do. So and you got to be careful to balance it with that too.
You've got to be careful to balance it, because you can overstep your boundaries.
Exactly right.
So you have to know, okay, you have to have the power to discern. Is this something I should be getting involved in? Or is this something I just need to be detached and watch from a distance? Because sometimes we can put ourselves into something that we have no business being in. So you really, really have to be careful and just take each thing.
That comes from experience when I say that, because I have missed that. I've missed that a few times.
Right.
Bless me, sister, for I have sinned. I have not discerned all the time.
But it happens.
Yes.
And you know, but at least you realize and you moved away. See, some people stay in those situations and they don't get out. Yeah. But you know, Bob, as we're coming towards the end of the show, it goes so very quick. We've had a wonderful conversation, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing those positive things in life. And as we've gone through this journey together, it seems like we're going through this journey for some time now. It's been wonderful, and I've seen how you've been. Now, just to briefly touch, what did you do as a profession? You were
I taught because I didn't know what else I could do when I came out of college, and I had no education credits whatsoever. And I went to and taught at St. Philip Neri in the Bronx, at 202nd and the Grand Concourse.
Oh, great.
And it was great. I would say for 5 years I taught in the Catholic school system with St. Philip Neri, got money, and I got respect.
Okay.
And I went to public school, I got money. It was difficult to get both.
Right.
So for, I think all of, and of course a few years before these fellows that are 14 years of age doing the stapling here, but you got $4,200 a year.
Okay.
When you first out there.
Thank you. As I said, we're nearing to the end, and I just want to say, thank you.
Did fly.
It flies so quick. You think you have all
Didn't
this time?
Didn't even get to talk about intergenerational advocates
there
for the
you
people.
go. Well, you can come back, Bob. You know,
okay.
I'm sure the guests would like to hear you. Well, the TV guests would like to hear what you have to say.
Yes.
But I want to thank you, guests, for I want to thank you, audience, for watching Give and Take, the positives in life. And I am your host, Cicely G, and you will see many guests come through and discuss all those wonderful things in life that they're doing. So thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.